My name is Kelly Rose. I teach at Waubonsie Valley High School. The class I taught today was AP European History with predominantly sophomores with a couple of juniors thrown in.
Great. Okay. We want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. First question, how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge?
It builds on two things. It builds on their writing skills that we're trying to promote in the class, and then it also builds on their content skills. So last unit, we studied the Enlightenment. We didn't study any economics. We didn't study any social change. It was pure political thought of the 18th century. This unit, then, we're picking up with the economic shifts, and those economic shifts push social shifts. So what we can see in the GenAct DBQ is a concrete visual lesson on what we covered yesterday, which were the economic shifts. So we covered agricultural revolution, we covered enclosure movement, the fact that we've got 3 continents of goods that can be bought now and sold. And then in the GenAct DBQ, we saw people manipulating that new economy, winners and losers. Tomorrow, then, we're going to talk about, or Monday, we'll talk about festivals and how people's social life will change because of the economics that we saw in today's lesson. So it's going to cover the whole 18th century. This is kind of the bridge between the two.
Good.
Oh, but then writing-wise, for the AP test, they have to write a DBQ. And so throughout the school year, I've been scaffolding them. The first DBQ, we had 1 week to write it. We could turn in rough drafts. We could work through things. Then we, last week, did a DBQ, and they had 2 days to write it. We peer edited so that they had practice with their own and then could see a good one or a bad one of their peers. Then this time, for today, we had only 1 evening to write the DBQ, and so we're constantly building those writing skills as well.
Okay, great. Is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge? If so, please give an example of other texts that form this sequence.
Right, so it's part of the DBQ building sequence. So we had 1 DBQ where they had long time to write it. We had a DBQ where they had 2 days to write it, and now this is a DBQ with 1 day to write it. And so even though the content of the documents doesn't run in a course, the idea of reading documents and then picking up the pace and being able to read them faster, being able to think quicker, and have only an hour to write off the documents based differently than 2 days to write off the documents is part of that skill set. This GenAct DBQ corresponds to items in their text inadvertently, I guess.
Okay, so let's see. Talk about the standards targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard?
What amazes me about the Common Core is how it's really focused me in on connecting to the text. I think in history, as long as the student has the main idea about the text, we wouldn't make them text specific. And so with this lesson, I've really focused on making things text specific and not just pie in the sky ideas. Also then, when I went through the writing standards, we saw that the history writing standards were met by 5. I had them peer edit. And the reason why I had them peer edit is because the standards had said that when you read other people's writing, your own writing is improved. Students who are weak writers can see what their peers can put together, and hopefully that gives them the confidence to actually keep trying and not to get defeated. They can also see how someone else attacks point of view rather than themselves. They can see how we can link sentences together, or students who are good writers can see, whoa, this person really needs some help. I really don't want to do that. And so I think it definitely hits writing standard 5. It also hits writing standard 8 because it uses multiple sources that have to be combined together to create meaningful thesis, but always with the document-based question, they've got to give specific evidence. And I think, especially for my teaching, that's where I was lacking. As long as the student got the main idea, I wasn't going to make them be text specific, but I've seen the value in saying, here's where I see the evidence, here is my evidence, now I'm going to build off that evidence. Also, I was happy to see in the standards, especially Standard 9, that they asked to talk about the writer's point of view. That's the hardest thing for my students to figure out. I know what the document says, but why would someone write it? And so the more practice we can do with point of view, the better. And I was happy to see that those were in the standards. For the reading standards, again, like I talked about, evidence, but I see that the social studies reading standard number 2 deals with relationships between texts. And again, my students did that in this DBQ because they have to group 3 to 4 documents in one paragraph. So they need evidence from document 2, and they're going to combine it with evidence in document 6. Then they're going to combine it with document 10, evidence. Then they'll put together warrants, and they'll connect it back to the thesis. So again, this process can help them to do that. In this class, then, we actually then connected, hopefully, the text that they read to the 18th century, and so making those connections. Also then listening, if they can listen to their peers and build off their peers. I don't know if they built off their peers, but hopefully in the pair share, their peers could say, oh, but it also connects to this document. In our lesson, Tori was able to help out Susan. Susan had a good idea, Tori connecting it to the text. That kind of thing, I think, hits the standards.
Okay, good. Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies and why?
Okay, for the core indicators, oh dear. They did go back to the text, and I was happy to see that. When I go through the note cards that they did, hopefully I can see they can find this argument that corresponds with this text. And so constantly going back to the text, and again, I think that's the weakest point I have as an educator. And so I really tried to get them to dive into the documents and use textual evidence. Also, the documents they were reading are content-rich, but at a reading level that is above their reading level. A tradesman journal from the 18th century is going to be, should I stop with this or?
Well, it's going to ring again.
A couple more times.
I heard a phone like that.
Yeah.
25 years.
You want to pause it for a minute?
I'm sorry. Back. Oh, okay.
The reading level.
Yeah.
Is a little... so let's see. Okay.
So for document 13, it's a Guild magazine from the 18th century. And even though there might not be complex thoughts in it, the vocabulary is tough because it's 18th century vocabulary. Also, we had the 2 images by Hogarth. And Hogarth is a satirical and a moralistic engraver. We'll look at his works later on in the year. Highly satirical, tough to comprehend, and they had to compare the 2 documents, so I liked the visual one there as well. Also, we had a chart in the DBQ, and so again, I think they had a rich wealth of different kinds of documents, but then also the reading level was tough, so I thought that standard was met well too. Oh, also then, I was happy with the shift that says they've got to connect the text to the content of what's going on. So they can see how the Gin Act is closing down institutions, building up other institutions. Tomorrow or Monday, I'll probably ask them a little bit about what Enlightenment thoughts we could get out of it. The notion of free trade, the notion of people being able to choose if they want to drink or not. Mercantilism will close it down, the guilds would close it down, but now, of course, people thinking for themselves. So hopefully that shift of putting it into a context with real text was also displayed, I hope.
We're interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your instruction. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Well, like I've said previously, the shift that I make my students give me evidence from the text instead of just raising their hand and giving me a good answer. So many times this year, I've told them, your answer is great. Some other student, prove it from the text. And I think we did more of it here than we normally do, and I think that's something I'm going to be conscious of more and more, is to get into the text. and give me that textual evidence. Also, the notion of peer grading, peer editing is helpful as well, and I need to do more of that than just me grading it. To get them to assess their peers' work will be helpful as well. Also, the more media I can bring in, the more visual literacy I can bring in for them, the better that will be too.
How did you teach the content of this lesson prior to the CCSS? What's the same and what's different?
We would definitely do the point of, I'll start over on that one, terrible. I have always taught this DBQ. Again, now I have them think, pair, share. That's new because students need to bounce ideas off each other. Also, content evidence, give me evidence from the text, that's new. Also, I bring in that document from The Economist and made them compare those two pictures, that's new, and then having them read The Economist article and cite evidence instead of before I had just read it out loud to them and asked them to raise their hand and talk to me. Now, forcing them into the text to find that evidence is new.
Student engagement is crucial to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensured that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. First question is, how did you support all students in working with grade level text? For example, how did you provide scaffolding for students below grade level so they could read at grade level text?
All my students are reading at a 12th grade level, so I don't have to do much scaffolding for them to read and understand. In fact, they all read that Economist article in under 5 minutes. So reading level for them is not a struggle, but writing document-based questions is a struggle for them, especially point of view work. So we've been working throughout the school year scaffolding these assignments. So at first we would just group the documents, find our evidence. Then we would write just an intro paragraph and the thesis. Then we would put the whole document together and I would give them a week to work on the essay. Then I moved down to 2 days to work on the essay, and then today we just had one night, write it, bring it in. When we come back from winter break, we're going to do an in-class DBQ where they have 10 minutes to read the documents and 30 minutes to write it. And so constantly building that strength, building that notion. Also in class today, we spent quite a lot of time on point of view. They struggle with it more than anything else. And so even on a class where we're not text-driven or text-based, we'll always be asking, what's that point of view? What's the author really getting to? And picking apart a text so they can see the structure, and then the more practice they can get, the better. Also, students should be engaged because even if they didn't understand what was going on, they wrote on that note card what document went with what reason. And so at least once they wrote down a document number. Also tonight, they'll all grade someone else's DBQ. And so even if they misinterpreted a document, or even if they've got point of view wrong, they can see in their peers' work the direction they should have gone into. So my struggling writers hopefully will get a DBQ that's phenomenal and they can learn off the good example of their peer.
Great. And then how did you create opportunities for students who are advanced to engage more deeply?
Well, one thing for the students who are advanced, they can answer the harder questions, right? That point of view is hard, or they could see nuances, or when they grade this evening, they'll see hopefully a superior work, but even if they see a work that isn't so good, they'll grade and they'll take a look, and you should see how they mark. Sometimes they're tougher graders than I am, and I think they really take pride in finding the problems. And so that's even a puzzle for them as well. It'll help them too because they'll know what to avoid.
How do you know the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision?
I think it's always hard to find out exactly what students are learning. I would be happy if 2 years from now they made a connection back to this class and I would never know about it. However, the note card for me will give me the basic knowledge. Did they read 3 documents, understand the gist, and can they make a connection to today? If I have time on Monday, it would be great to go through the ones that they might have missed. So if I find that certain students can't figure out, I can write on the note card, you should have thought this way, and then hopefully turn them in the right direction. I'll also grade those DBQ essays, and then when I give feedback on the rubric and in their essay, hopefully gently I can turn them in the right direction too.
Did students acquire the literary skills addressed in the lesson?
I think they probably came in with the literary skills that they needed. I think what an AP class can do is build on their strong literary skills and teach them more nuances of writing. I think if you have a basic level class, literacy may be the goal. My class, literacy is not the goal. They know how to read. In fact, there's probably students in here that read better than I do. But the gist is, how can we fine-tune their writing? How can we fine-tune their thinking? How can we find nuances? And how can I take basic literacy and up the ante so that they can go to college with no trouble? This is a college course busted down for high schoolers. So I've got to push them in the nuances of college, not the nuances of literacy.
What did you do for students? What did you do for students who did not acquire the literary skills?
We've got more trying times to come. So if they do stumble on the DBQ writing and in the essay, I can gently remind them, this document you misread. Here's why you misread it. Next time, think about looking at it this way. Also, when they don't get point of view, I circle it and say, how would this person being a noble impact how they think? Sometimes if they just can get another question in their mind when they're doing DBQ, or the point of view, then they can maybe remember that question next time. One of the questions I always ask them is, how can this person make money off it? Well, if they aren't so scared of point of view because they don't know it, if they just ask themselves the question, how does someone make money off it? That's 95% of the time, that's why we do something. So hopefully the guided questions when I grade the essay can help them too.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson, and what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
I think probably Core A from Core Action 3, students persist in efforts to read, speak, or write about demanding grade level texts. We write 5 essays each semester, and every time they write an essay, they get better. They get stronger. And so I think I give them multiple texts throughout the year, and you can see them progress with the text. By the time we get to the last DBQ on the Cold War, they're taking really hard Cold War concepts, and they're really able to use them because we just keep practicing and we just keep building and we just keep using that high level of text. I think also, probably B, students habitually provide textual evidence to support answers and response. And for the most part, I think today my students could use textual evidence, they could cite me, the quote, and then hopefully connect it to a bigger picture idea. I really feel if you can just give evidence, that's nice, but if you can't connect that evidence to something bigger, then you're just an evidence collector. And I really think in history, evidence is nice, but if you're not building towards something else, it doesn't matter how much evidence you have. And so I think what my students are able to do is to take the evidence and support a bigger concept. That I'm really pleased with.
Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. Reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
The first thing I think I did wrong is I just had too much in the lesson. There were things I planned didn't get to today. At the end, I had them compare the new picture of Janelli to the old picture of Janelli, but we didn't talk about it, we didn't discuss it. I think that's something. I think I have to be conscious when I do a text-based lesson, I can't jam in 5 more things. And I think that's the biggest shift I'm gonna have to make, is to take the time to actually concentrate on the text and not bigger issues. Saying that, that was probably the thing I was the most happy with. They had done their learning on the 18th century, and I was so pleased at how they could connect the text to the 18th century, see how institutions were being torn down and how different things were emerging. I was happy with that.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
I think because I had told them they were being videotaped. I had students participate today that I had never had participate today, so I was very happy about that. But otherwise, no, they usually do this caliber of work.
Great, that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
you.
Please cut it all.